Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the motion of consent to approve minutes A through I.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so carried. Go right to the school lunch program. Okay.
So we had discussion, I know, last meeting on this, and board's been updated periodically, and then Ryan's going to chime in here in a minute. But generally, you know, we're no longer eligible for the community eligibility program, so free lunches are for everybody. It's not available for this coming year. So we will have to charge a price for those families who are not eligible for what I'll just call the traditional free and reduced meal criteria for that. So people who would be eligible, and we encourage all families to fill out the forms and turn them in. It's all confidential. Nobody sees them, you know, in that regard. So and if they are eligible, they will get to eat for free. If I'm correct, right? Even if they're reduced, they're going to eat for free because New York State has a COVID waiver still, and that is one COVID thing we hope they continue. You know, in that regard. But for folks who aren't eligible, then they're going to have to pay for breakfast and lunch, and you'll see later in the agenda, you'll be approving those rates. Ryan can speak. So I know we surveyed, well, they did a whole formula check here in Mary. And then we also just surveyed the other schools around us just to see if we're in the, you know, same area, which we are and stuff like that. So I'll turn over to Ryan for any more details.
So just to speak a little bit more about the COVID waiver there, any student that has been identified as free or reduced would get free meals. They wouldn't have to pay for them. Reporting wise, we would still have to report students as either free or reduced. So even though they're not paying, we still need to report them differently. That's something we will have internally within our point of sale system. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on that? Because I know that's kind of
Confusing.
yes.
Do we have any like percentages of the last time we were involved with this?
Mhm.
I know we didn't have COVID, but prior to COVID.
Are you talking about CEP?
Before we were on the eligibility, how many were free and reduced?
I'll get to, so CEP is different than free and reduced lunch. I'll get to the CEP part in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, because they're different, I've had a lot of conversations with child nutrition. So on the note of CEP, so CEP has nothing to do for the word, you know, per child nutrition, has nothing to do with free and reduced lunch, nothing at all. Has everything to do with SNAP and Medicaid. When we as a district submitted our application before the 2017-2018 school year, we were at 63.5%, which qualified us for 100% CEP, meaning no kid pays for any meal. Snacks, obviously, they pay for and whatnot, but meals were free. Now we went back and to apply, and we were below 35%. What's the impact there? What happened? Based on our enrollment, we have a much lower percentage of families that are utilizing SNAP and Medicaid services, both federal services. So again, free and reduced lunch plays no role into this whatsoever. Okay, so the question then was, well, can we apply on a building basis instead of a district basis? Maybe CE is 41%. They're over the 40% minimum, but the middle school isn't, the high school isn't, the elementary school isn't. The problem there is 40% gives you a percentage CEP. Over that 62.5% is where you got the 100% CEP. The caveat with the percentage CEP is you have to fund that money essentially out of the general fund. You can't use federal dollars. You can't ask families to supplement it. You have to use the general fund to do it, which we did not budget for. In a previous meeting I had shared with you guys, if we were to fund this, we are looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this, to supplement out of the general fund, which we don't have. So in speaking with child nutrition, We elected not to go with the CEP extension because again, with that extension, we would have to pay for this out of the general fund. Just remember that. With that, I then went to local school districts to find out, what are you guys charging for meals? Because the last time we charged for meals was 5 years ago. And at that point, we were charging $1.70 for breakfast, $2.70 for lunch in the elementary schools, $2.90 in the middle school, high school for lunch. So Catskill, I talked to Greenville, RCS, Skodak, Hudson, and Ichabod Crane, just our contiguous districts here. Catskill and Hudson, we removed because they're 100% CEP districts. So looking at Greenville, RCS, and Skodak, they're all right around that $1.75 price tag for breakfast, and that's our proposal. You'll see that in your minutes. For the middle school, high school students, they were right around that $2.05 mark last year. We're looking at a $2.10 for this coming year. When I looked at the lunch prices, the average last year was $2.66. So the question then is, so why did you tell us $3? The reason I wanted to go with $3 on that is because if you were to look at the numbers, Greenville is $3, RCS was $2.85, Skodak was $3.05, and Ichabod Crane was $1.75. So Ichabod Crane's really your outlier there that's dragging that average down. After talking to Ichabod and asking them, why are you charging so little for lunch? It's because they have, they're apportioning the COVID waiver some more with that. So they've got some supplement to pay for that. So that's why I suggested $3 for the elementary school. Keep in mind, we were $2.70 4 years ago. The middle school, high school, which was $2.90 4 years ago, I proposed $3.15, which is the average of those schools, the identical average to those schools that I mentioned before. What's not on the board minutes that doesn't really have to do with kids, has more to do with staff, is we are looking to increase our adult meal price as well, because we do have teachers, I can do it, go through the line and you could get a full lunch for $2.90. And the school's not really able to sustain that. So, keep in mind that when your cafeteria fund can't support this, it falls back on the general fund. So I've been working with Mary of Stefano, our food service director, of ways where if families do fall behind, what strategies are we putting in place to contact those families to make their account whole? Or if a student would potentially fall into that free and reduced category, how do we get that kid's family to fill out the paperwork so that, again, they can either get the reduced ID tag or their free ID tag, but still not pay anything for meals, which wouldn't hurt our general fund at all. So that's kind of where I'm at right now as far as where these meal prices are coming from, the CEP, the free and reduced, the SNAP Medicaid numbers.
When you say ID tag, you don't mean literally.
No. I just meant like they
on paper, on the computer.
nobody would know, right? So I'm glad you asked that. Meal shaming is obviously still not allowed, right? A kid has a negative $10 balance on their account and they go through the line and it's chicken parm day. You can't throw the kid a peanut butter jelly sandwich and say, you have a negative balance, you can't buy this. Where we can say no to food is if it's a snack. If a kid goes back through and wants a bag of Doritos, a secondary meal and such, that's where, you can't do that. You're red. But no, there's no actual ID tag. Kids have PIN numbers at the point of sale.
Ryan, you mentioned that one school uses COVID waiver monies.
So they're still operating under that CEP that I had talked about before.
Okay.
And it's a different boat than what we're in. I didn't really understand it very well, to be honest with you.
Right.
But they're not coming off of the 100% CEP that we're accustomed to for the past 4 years. Then Ichabod Crane was at school.
I know last time we had charged for meals, correct me if I'm wrong, Randy, but I think at the end of the year, one time we were in the hole for like $40,000 in the food service program.
Well, the food service paid out of the whole, that's what was owed us.
So it was owed us,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Yeah, right. And that was when prices were lower.
Right. For everything.
Yeah.
So your cafeteria staff, your food, your milk prices, everything.
So I'm assuming the situation hasn't gotten better, especially with inflation, and families are strained.
Mhm.
It's just a difficult time for this for families.
That was, that was the $1 million question I asked Child Nutrition. I didn't get an answer to, because I don't think they have one. Was, so you're telling us that we're affluent enough to not be able to offer 100% CEP, but you're not allowing families to pay the supplement to the remaining percentage that is not covered by CEP. Is that what you're telling me? They said yes. I said, that makes no sense whatsoever. We don't qualify because we have too much money. But now we can't use that money to lower meal costs. Instead of $3, I can charge a kid $1 and have CEP pick up the other $2, let's say, for argument's sake. And that they said that's the program. So,
New York.
Huh?
New York.
yes. So right now, California and Maine and Vermont are offering free meals to all students. I believe it's in the legislature within the state to get the same thing here at the state level. If we get that, obviously this is a moot point, but there have been, I think it's called All Kids Fed is the movement or the agenda there. That's obviously where we'd like to be. It's just a matter of getting there.
Can this board send a letter to the governor's office?
Absolutely.
And
I'll be happy to write it.
Have you ever read?
I do.
I think we're ready to sign it.
All right.
Absolutely.
There's a movement amongst, I know, the superintendent's organization as well, for the same thing. Kind of parroting what Ryan said there. New York likes to think of itself as a progressive state, and we don't like California beating. I mean, talking cheek here, but like California beating us on some of this stuff. So it's an election year too.
Right.
So we might have some.
So in the budget, if we do have portions of money that are owed to us.
In the cafeteria budget.
That money will have to come out of the general fund, right?
In the end, if it's unpaid, would have to be taken from the general fund, yes. That's not point, yes.
Right, and you have to budget for that, correct?
I have to make sure it's there, yes.
It's there, right.
Yep. So I've already talked to Mary. If you look in our, I think it's a board policy that says after 5 charged meals in the red, the families must be contacted by school personnel. That would be Mary in this case. I've asked her, and together she and I developed a call log, just so we can monitor and make sure that people are indeed being called.
Right. I guess, could you report back to the board after so many months?
Of where we stand?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And like,
Yeah,
see where the trend is?
Yeah, it's pulling data from her point of sale. So, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Again, it's been 5 years, but I do recall we can set it up where anybody who's in the red will get an automatic phone call.
Right.
If you have an account,
Mhm.
like it with My School Bucks, you'll get an email or a phone call or however you want to set it up. You said, you have no more money in or you're down to $1 in your My School Bucks account, please replenish it. There's multiple ways to communicate, but there's honestly not a lot of strong leverage we have on folks to pay off.
Besides us, I think we talked about getting it publicized that people in the community can write letters to the assembly people and senators, right? Like, did we include that somewhere that people want to advocate for all kids fed? They could write to our legislators.
Mrs. Hinchy.
And I think we also talked about then we were going to call them first to let them know that we were going to be suggesting this so that they would be expecting, know where the calls are, why they may be getting calls. Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
The only question I had was, you have the breakfast and lunch on there. Did the price of if the kids want a milk for a snack?
Yes, that's typically not board approved, but we're gonna be at 60 cents for elementary, 65 cents for middle school, high school.
So you know what it was before we,
It was, I do not know.
I remember when it was 25 cents.
Mm.
Definitely gone up from that.
Did you walk up the hill to school?
7
boys?
cents.
Yeah.
I remember 25 cents for a whole meal.
No. Date ourselves.
So kids could still send in like enough money to.
I would emphasize setting up a My School Bucks account. I know Randy and I had talked the other day. If you go to our school website, there's that, what is this referring now? It's that pop-up screen that comes up right now. It's about the reading list. Once the reading list goes away, maybe we can do a My
Yeah.
School Bucks link and also maybe a link to our free and reduced lunch form, because with that, again, we get families that might be reduced. Now that hopefully we're broadcasting, it's free. They don't have to spend or supplement that with anything. It's just on us to report it. I think we can continue doing that, because the last time when I was doing something last year for my internship, I think our free and reduced numbers are almost 60%.
Yeah.
They're not, I mean, it's not like our free and reduced numbers are down in the 30s, like our CEP application showed for the SNAP and Medicaid usage, but the free and reduced numbers are still high. So the good news is a majority of our kids are still going to be now eating free meals. It's just going to be under a different.
And they have to fill the form out. That's the.
Form's got to be filled out. Yep. We've attached it with, correct me if I'm wrong, the calendar in the past,
Mhm.
pre-K packets, kindergarten packets, welcoming packets to new residents.
No, I think your call out will help, because then Mary can say, if you
Please
need
fill
help,
this
and she'll
out,
say,
yeah.
if you need help, because I
Yes,
know Mary will.
Yep.
I'll help you fill it
Yeah.
out if you
Yep.
need, because that will be very helpful with the families if they do get behind.
I guess I'm thinking out of the box here, but whoever is on the liaison committee for the next year, if they're out in the public, maybe that's something they could push at any event that they're at and have the paperwork there to hand out.
Even at the PTO table,
Talked about
at open
PTO.
house for
That's what it was,
those
open.
kids.
That was the other one I was thinking. We had talked about doing it at open house. That's the other one I was thinking of there.
Yeah, because PTO sits at the elementary open house. I mean, even just sticking that at that table, because we have usually freebies and.
Doesn't the form go
parents
out
come to
though
it.
in the middle of that flyer? So
It does.
Yeah, it's been a struggle to get folks to return it, and it's not a Coxsackie Athens problem. I know Skodak's
It's
facing the same.
everywhere,
When I go to my weekly meetings with the local SBOs, it's the same problem everywhere. You know, some of our more urban districts, then they're having the problem as well as our more rural districts. So
Yeah.
there's really not a population
right.
or anything that's just not doing it. People aren't submitting it.
Well, I remember talking about this years ago, and we know kids don't have control over the family's
Mhm.
budget. So there could be, we'll have to be watching, staff will have to be watching if kids are not eating. So whoever's in that cafeteria, like if they're embarrassed that they're not eating, or we'll just have to be watching that.
What's that?
They shouldn't eat.
They can eat, yeah.
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna be
yeah.
refused any sort of meal. Like I said before, the only meals that are gonna be refused are seconds.
But if they can't, if their family can't afford this,
They still go through the line and get fed.
But
Well, they may not, they may decide that,
Oh, the kid, you mean the kid might
Yeah,
choose
they
not to
do
go
that.
through. I got you. I'm
Right,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
It
Yeah,
happened,
exactly.
it
Bills with
happened
parents.
before we got
Yeah.
this free meals for all. Kids just were aware that their parents didn't have the money, so they just wouldn't charge the meal and just wouldn't eat for lunch. And so they would go all day without food. So I think that's
Right.
where Mike is more falling, like, how do we tell those kids that it's okay, we'll figure something out.
you almost wonder if there's some private enterprise out there
yeah,
that is aware of this and has grant money to give.
yeah.
You know, you wonder.
Bill's the same in high school packets going home with the welcome back letter too.
Okay.
Sorry, just text from.
So
from
we
Mr. Brown,
will
who
be flooding
uses
the
that
airways,
word,
if
he
you
said.
will, to our parents, just with the application, any opportunity to, gently remind them to do it. They can do it online too, for those who don't know that route, but we'll keep getting out as much as we can, reminding them. Because my concern is that the first week of school, people, don't necessarily read everything that comes home from the school, et cetera, et cetera. Kids are gonna be walking in here, well, you're gonna have to pay, so that first week could be a little,
Right.
they're still getting fed, but there's gonna be a lot of kids going home. And they're, the parents will be hearing for the first time possibly at that point.
Anything else on this? All right, then. Move on. We're gonna talk about committee structure later in the meeting. So then just to the links, draft goals.
Oh, so that-
So, as you're aware, every 3 years, our Links team, which is made up of a whole bunch of teacher leaders and teachers, and anybody can be on our Links team. But formally, those folks are on administrators, come up with new 3-year performance goals, and this happens to be the year for that. And then before I get to these, the process is, okay, once we've established those 3-year goals, and each building goes and then establishes some annual targets for them to work towards, that first year, including the strategies and action steps and what they're going to do together to try to have our kids obtain those goals. And of course, collectively, what can we do as a district, et cetera. So I want to bring these to you before they're official or anything like that, to get feedback on that. It's kind of run parallel with the board, setting your priorities as well for the upcoming year in that regard. The categories, the 5 categories really hasn't changed since the 2022 goals, which is good for that. Again, we want to try to reach that 95% of our students to graduate each year. I think this past class was 92%, I think. Mr. Burrell told me. So, but anyway, so in order to do that, wellness is one of the priorities that they've chosen, one of their goals. And then they, by 2025, they hope that 100% of our students and employees are able to identify at least one ally, at all times. It can change each year for the kids, but at least that can happen. And also the climate surveys that will be doing pre and post surveys as well show improved results in regards to those types of questions that are on there. I think I've shared those before, at least in your weekly updates, but we can have it sometime as a meeting if you want to go through those as well. So that's one. Reading began with the pandemic. We slipped a little bit there, so we want to get back up to about 73% of our kids pre-K-8 will be reading above grade level. In 3 years, a 19% improvement from where we are as of June. And in math, the same. It's interesting, they're about the same percentage of kids who are at above grade level. Research-based projects, we currently have all of our kids doing 1 a year. We want them to be up to 3 a year by 2025, where students are researching, learning how to use databases, learning how to look up information, et cetera, as well as writing or presenting the material in a variety of ways, not just written reports, but also possibly presentations, videos, et cetera, and having part of those being part of advocating too for causes as they go through. And then life readiness, I want 100% of our students to demonstrate the majority of the life ready skills, the 4 CS skills that are on right now on our kids' report cards, as well as financial literacy indicators appropriate for their school level by 2025. So those are the 5 areas of focus that the Links team, the teachers, and et cetera, came up with. So that's the board for comment, questions.
For me, and I realized the 19% and 17% increase that's over a 3-year period, correct?
Correct.
Right. For me, I just don't think it's aggressive enough. I think we should be at least up to 80%. And I think there might have been years in the past where we did target 80%. So that's just my reaction to what I see.
Yeah, was it 80 or 85%?
I would have to go look.
I know.
But it was higher.
In one slide, I think that's about 80%.
Yeah, I think you recall it was. And in fact, our 22s might have been higher because that was before the COVID, before pandemic, because if we see slight improvement before pandemic, we were going to aim high, and then, the world stopped.
So 19% and 70% in 3 years, this seems low.
But they're missing their base. COVID made them miss a lot, so they didn't get the base of learning, their letters, their sounds. They miss, and the older you get, the longer it takes and the harder it is to learn it. So I thought that was generous.
Well, I'm wondering if we need to, because we only got so much time in the day for instruction, and we seem to be putting more burdens on the staff, teachers, what they need to do in the course of a day. So I'm wondering if there's a way to scale back on some of those other things and focus on the reading and math issue. Just a thought.
I don't know if this is the right place, but I'm gonna kind of piggyback off of you, Bart. With that grade level at CE, where we were supposed to have 3 sections, but now we're having 2 and having a full, or no, are we doing that? Having the 2 sections and then the full-time RTI? Is that what we're doing in that
2
grade level?
sections or 3? Because I thought you were
She
gonna
said
just maybe 3
we
sections.
gave the teachers the option between 3 sections doing their RTI or 2 sections, and one of them being a designated RTI provider for that grade level. And they selected the 2 classes with the designated.
And how
RTI
many
provider.
students are in that cohort, that third grade section?
Yeah. The 3rd grade, so that, that CE grade level is 37.
So they'll have about 12 students. Oh, no.
No, they'll have 18 in one class and 19.
And that was that one, correct me if I'm wrong, that was the year that their kindergarten got cut and they could either come to school or not come to school for 1st grade, right? So perhaps we should keep it at 3 sections and still give them the RTI just to get them back up, because we saw their test scores at the last meeting and they were atrocious, to say the least. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, but. I'm just
No,
kind of-
I've always been a strong advocate for RTI and not cutting it. And actually, I'm in support of smaller class sizes too, because a lot of kids can get lost in the shuffle. But I sound like a broken record because I feel like I bring it up a lot.
And were they doing all levels of tier of the RTI, or were they just doing like the 2nd grade classrooms did, providing tier 1 and some of tier 2? Or were they being
If they had
asked,
been 3 sections, you mean?
yeah, were they being asked to do tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3,
Within
which a
the,
lot of them would need extra training for, and a whole lot of small group time.
All the teachers are asked to do tier 1 and some tier 2. If they were going to 3 sections, they do additional tier 2, but when kids go to tier 3, it's usually because they need like a one-on-one.
or a
That's
small
when you're
group,
getting
yeah.
smaller. So we didn't have kids in that boat yet, so we would have that conversation when they came up. Because depending on what they need, some of the kids in there need a very specialized, say it's reading issue, they need a specialized reading program that the classroom teachers wouldn't have, so.
And I know a lot of the parents in that group were concerned. I'm one of those, but I know a lot of the other parents, I didn't say anything to them, but they, were glad with the improvement that their kids made from 1st grade to 2nd grade, because 1st grade, they were in the 30s at math and reading, and they did come up some, but I think if they find out that their kids are in 2 classrooms, they're gonna be, like I said, I didn't say anything because I was not getting attacked for it, so I kind of kept my mouth closed.
I guess
But
we also have to have the conversation about, are we specifically focused on just the third grade, or are we looking at the district as a whole? Because if we divide them into 3 sections, then once again, you're using the RTI providers who are servicing all the grade levels and classes that are at 16, 17 kids. And they're not going to have access possibly as much RTI services as they would have had if the third grade didn't have to access those services.
So who's working with the students when the teacher's working with the RTI students? Like, are there gonna be more aides or assistants in the classrooms? Because those teachers can't do it all. I mean, we have wonderful staff, but they can't do it all.
Most of the time, what happens, even currently, when teachers are doing pieces of RTI, the classroom teachers, it's during their small group or their center time. So whenever you're having small groups, kids are doing sometimes independent work, excuse me, sometimes partner work. It depends on how the teacher sets up the structure. Karen and I met with the third grade teachers, excuse me, and gave them a lot of latitude to figure it out, especially because there aren't a lot of RTI groups in that grade level. So the third teacher would have time to also do some, however they wanted to figure out how to do it. Would possibly have time to do whole group lessons as well, because their whole day would not be taken up. I think we estimated, Karen, memory serves me correctly, that it was maybe 2 hours out of the day would be RTI groups. I think it's something to that effect. I might be a little bit off my numbers, which would then, if that person which was the plan, specifically for the third grade, then they would have time to divide up the kids, say for a whole class reading, if they wanted to do 3 different groups for whole class reading versus doing 2. Or math. We're talking about math too.
And if they increase by 19%, they're not gonna stop. They're not gonna say, okay, we're not gonna do it anymore. We're gonna keep going. So hopefully, they can increase by 20, 25% or more. I mean, that's the goal, just keep improving and improving.
But you gotta have the right strategies in place.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
Which is what they're working on now. At the building, in other words, at the September meeting, we can come to you with what you'll see what the plan, if you will, what all their strategies. Now we can come back, because they're meeting again, end of this month. Say, want to aim a little higher, if that's, they're the ones there, that's why we, not top down here. So we said, what do you think you want to aim high? And there's always that, psychological, you want a goal, it's doable, but you want to, we call it a stretch goal. You want to try to stretch it a little bit. And I always remind them, let's say you had an 80%, but you got to 79, let's celebrate anyway. That's still a huge improvement, in that regard. So sometimes it's just getting that mindset they can do it.
so do we need strategies or resources for both?
So
So have we budgeted for those resources?
And what are the resources? Like what are some of the things? Like, is it materials? Is it people?
Training.
Yeah, so can I jump up and jump
Yes,
into my ELA and my math? Stealing your thunder there, Mr. Sparks. Can you just throw up the ELA and the math? So just because there's pieces of this that go along with the ELA and the math, this is just the next tab, right there. Let me click to the first slide.
There's a
Oh, there. Thank you, perfect. So just to bring this, I'll backtrack a little bit and then we'll get back onto links. So I had both an ELA panel and a math panel get together all the way back in spring of 2021. Because we have been looking at our data, and obviously like everybody else with COVID, things were not where they needed to be. So one of the first things we want to do is just take a look at all of our data and all of our programs, both tier 1 and our intervention programs, to ask ourselves, do we have the right stuff in place? So that process started. The area that people were the most concerned about at that point in time, because we didn't want to do ELA and math in parallel for the poor elementary people, because you can't switch up curriculum for 2 different subject areas all at the same time, because it's too much. in terms of training and everything. So we decided that for this school year, the ELA panel met, and we really worked on that. So what they decided to do is that we really need to look at it in two different areas. So the basis of our program is Lucy Calkins, and I'm sure you've heard there's lots of information out there that there are gaps in that program. It doesn't necessarily follow the science of reading. So we had grade level meetings. We talked about the gaps that we had last year and worked on strategies throughout the year. But then we also talked about, okay, well, what are we going to do going forward? And we felt that there was no one size fits all answer. So we wanted to look at things. So the ELA panel suggested the ELA Fair, which we had in the spring, which we looked at all the comprehensive programs that are out there, and then also programs that supplement the Lucy Calkins. So if there are particular areas like phonics seemed to be one of the areas we really struggled in. So what supplemental programs were there that weren't offering a whole curriculum, but offer you a piece of a curriculum that you could do in conjunction. So from that fair, we had teachers volunteer to pilot things. Initially, we were going to pilot 2 comprehensive programs, which was going to be CKLA, which is really the modules from the state. They just tweaked them a little bit. So that pilot is going forward. So we're going to have teachers in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade piloting CKLA. The other comprehensive program that we were going to pilot was with the American Reading Company, and quite honestly, the cost to pilot for 4 teachers was more than I budget for textbooks for an entire year. And they would not come down and they would not have a conversation. So we are not going to pilot that ourselves, but Saratoga uses the program. So we are going to partner with them to take a look at how their implementation is going for American Reading Company. I'm concerned about it because should it be something that we choose to adopt at some point, it is an incredible amount of money up front. So I'll have to come back to that. Great program, got a lot of wonderful bells and whistles and a ton of professional development. So I don't want to 100% rule it out, but piloting it just really didn't make fiscal sense. So in addition to that, we are piloting Sadler Phonics, Foundations, really great reading, and then Integrity we're piloting. We already had started using that a bit in the pre-K and kindergarten this year. So we have teachers who are all going to try to supplement that, and then throughout the year, we'll take a look and see, is this having a positive impact on, but we'll primarily look at FastBridge, but we'll also have teachers report what they see in the classroom. So the plan right now is that around, because we give FastBridge in January, so around February, we'll have the teachers do a presentation for the rest of the staff to say, this is what we saw, this is what we like about it, this is what we don't like about it, this is how our data looks right now. One data point does not answer the question as to whether it works or it doesn't work. And then we will get the ELA panel back together again after that and say, okay, well, where are we now? Do we feel like we need to continue piloting for another year? Do we feel like something has risen to the surface and really is the solid program that we want to go with? So with that, in terms of money and training and resources, so obviously all these different programs, most of them have worked very nicely with us and given us great discounts and free materials and things. But I have utilized textbook money to pay for different materials underneath all these programs. Additionally, we've had teachers come in over the summer to start some of the training with these programs. Really great reading we have been using with our special education department. So that's an internal turnaround training. We do have teachers who have used Foundations in the past, so they just needed a little bit of a refresher. CKLA has a ton of webinars, so we're going to be working with them to schedule those throughout the year.
So Kara, are we just trying to, all these programs to see what works? Is that the?
Yes, yes.
So this is to improve the percentages.
Yep, so what we found with Lucy, which I think is what most school districts are finding, is there are elements that are strong in the program, but there are definitely elements that are leaving you with gaps. So the conversation in the ELA panel was not the feeling that 100% we decided we just needed a different program, but a question more of, could we take what we have and supplement it, or do we need an entirely different program? And people felt they really needed to try it and live with it in order to answer that question. Because you could talk to other school districts, but people want to use it themselves and kind of get a sense of.
These 4 or 5 different programs.
It's a little bit of a circus initially.
Right, so like, do you just ask people to try something and have it be like, kind of like the little focus group?
Yes, so once we did the fair, at the fair, people rated it. We gave them a rating sheet that basically detailed all the different things from the science of reading in terms of what a reading program should have, what needed to be addressed. And they ranked them what they thought they had, what they thought they were missing. And then teachers volunteered to pilot. So we do have some teachers who are not piloting anything. They're going to do this year just what they did last year. The agreement was you're not changing anything else. If you're piloting, let us know, and you're piloting something that we have on here. If you're not piloting, you'll do what you did last year, then you're our control group. And for the people who are piloting, it's making sure they have all the resources and they have the training to go along with that. And then they're going to be able to give us a more Coxsackie Athens personalized feeling of how the curriculum works for the specific kids that we're dealing with. And then we have to decide where we want to go from there.
And it's pre-K to 8.
It's pre-K to 8, 7th and 8th grade did not decide to pilot any of the supplemental things because they really don't deal as much with phonics and the gaps. There was some conversation about the modules, but at the end of the day, 7th and 8th grade opted to stay with what they're working with last year. So they're not piloting anything.
Last year, did we send, and I don't know why I think this, did we send some teachers to be trained in the Orton Gillingham? Do we
Yes.
not like that? Because that's what we use at my school and we love it.
Oh, yeah. Oregon Gillingham training is continuing on. That's an intervention program.
Okay.
Also in the panel, we had the conversation. We really needed to look at what we're doing tier 1 first and then match our intervention program to our tier 1. And
So
then
that's
if we,
another thing with all
Yes.
this.
but yes, that was done through the special education department actually. But, and we have some teachers who are going on to the second level of the Oregon Gillingham.
And these panels are our people.
Yes.
You know,
If people volunteer to be on
how
it.
where did these programs, like who selected these to even look at?
So the panel myself reached out to anybody we knew from other districts and said, hey, what are you using? The reality is most of our neighborhood districts are also using Lucy, and they're also in the midst of looking at it in terms of their curriculum and what they want to do. We were fortunate that there are some districts, some of the districts were districts that our teachers have their children at, and they brought back information of what their kids were working on. So that's how some of the programs got onto the list. But it really was just asking around, what are you guys using? What do you like? What do you don't like?
Can Questar help us with coordinating this or somebody so that there's not all these different districts doing silo work, but that you work kind of in coordination to see
Together
which
and talk
works?
to them. They could probably do that, because we are all, I mean, I know on our curriculum group, we're all
Except
talking about
Saratoga's
all the
not.
different. Yeah, Saratoga was a little bit ahead of us, and they've already picked the American Reading Company, so, so we're gonna get to watch their growing pains as they work to adapt it, but even by Saratoga standards, they said it was very expensive. I couldn't nail them down on what exactly that meant.
Carrie, would it make more sense looking at like the links goals that we want to show growth, rather than going from September to June while we're piloting new programs, to track that cohort and see how they go growth-wise over, say, 2 or 3 years, to kind of nail down which programs are working better? Because I mean, if I'm starting a new program, it's going to take everybody a little bit of catch-up time here. So it's not going to show fairly, I don't think, at the end of the year where necessarily everybody's at. If we look at them from where they are at the beginning of first grade to the end of second grade, that should be where we see our.
And we do cohort our information too. So yes, we can look at it both ways. We'll be looking at it, and again, it's a one data point when we look at it in the winter, just to see if the teachers feel like there was more of a balance there. And we'll also listen to what the teachers have to say. You know, if they feel like in the classroom they're seeing stronger kids and things, we may not necessarily see it on FastBridge right away. It's one data point. I can see the ELA panel possibly saying we need a second year of digging in on this before we really feel like we're going to know if it works or it doesn't work. We have in the past, so when we went to Lucy, we did something similar, but we narrowed our focus much sooner. So people really just piloted Lucy, and then we asked, well, do you like it? Do you not like it? And the majority said they liked it, and then that's where we went with it. So then the feeling was this time we wanted to make sure that there were lots of options for people. So that is ELA. Math panel also did the same thing, except we didn't meet all throughout the year to do the fair. Their fair will occur at some point this year, but we accidentally found spring math, and just yesterday I got an email, so I may have found another possible universal screening to intervention program. But spring math, we're going to be piloting that. This is a little bit early, but it kind of, like I said, our school psychologist was at well, she does podcasting and things and listens to all that stuff. So she heard about it from a former professor of hers. So spring math is an intervention program. It's 15 minutes a day. You do it with your entire class. You screen everybody and then they work through particular skills that it tells you to work through. It's not on the computer, it's on paper, but you put the teacher puts the scores in to the computer, and that's how the computer tells you what to do with the groups of kids afterwards. And what the feeling is there is that can be useful to close gaps. As I said, I just got an email yesterday. IXL, which is a program we have been using, has just come out with a universal screener that will do something similar, take you from universal screener to interventions. So we're going to take a look at that and see if we pilot that with 1 or 2 classes this year. But spring math is specifically more of an intervention program, though it is a whole class intervention program. It is not a curriculum. But we do have teachers who have volunteered to pilot that program. And because the kids do it on pen and paper and you put it into the computer, we then, with the SEP plan, got some money. So I think Randy spoke to you about, we're going to have a math coach that's going to be able to go into the classroom with those teachers and be able to input that stuff to make it easier for the teachers to pilot that. So we have teachers who have volunteered to pilot spring math. So we're hoping that will be helpful in mathematics. We also, the math panel did meet in June. And one of the important things that came out of there is they really felt that in the first 2 grade levels, we should probably throw pre-K on here, but they had just started. So they felt that with the fact fluency and number retention, there wasn't enough time that kids were using manipulatives. So that because they were moving to the abstract too quickly, they really did not get the underlying number concept. And that was becoming a much bigger problem in 3rd grade, 4th grade. So the kindergarten, 1st grade teachers met over the summer to take a look at what they were doing and try to infuse a little bit more of that and a little bit more practice on that. So again, spring math, there was a cost with that, so we put money aside for that. They worked with us again because it's a pilot and it was not expensive. And we thank Nicole because she got the kids all into the spring math programs once the kids are loaded. Like I said, the math coach will help input the information for the kids, and then it just tells you, okay, here's the lesson that you're going to do with the kids, and it's a lot of partner work between the kids in the classroom. So we're hoping that that will cover some gaps as well.
Is that similar to Reflex?
Reflex,
I know Abby does that, so that's why I was like trying to
yeah,
figure
Reflex,
out.
what I call that is, it's a kind of skill and drill. It's great for fact fluency. The kids sit on the computer, but there's not instruction that goes along with it. They're just practicing their facts. So spring math, it really gives the teachers, okay, you screen them with this, and it organizes the skills. They need to have A before they can move to B, before they can move to C. So if they don't have A, it'll tell you, you need to, as a whole class, go over this, and then have your kids practice it and watch them practice it. So it's a little bit more directive.
Yeah, because your kids in Reflex can go all over the place, because it's really, they get to go by themselves, so you can get one kid, I know, some stuff.
And that's great to
Yeah.
use for, a center. It's great for kids when they go home. It's terrific over the summer to keep them fresh, because the fact fluency really is one of the things that everybody talks about, that the kids just don't have that immediate recall. And when it takes too long to try to figure it out in a word problem, that's how a lot of our kids get derailed. So it's a great program, and we're very excited the teachers have been using it. They used it for the last 2 years. And they do think that it has really improved the fact fluency. They just now are starting to see there's this underlying lack of understanding about numbers. So these are going to be. And again, as with the math, when we meet as the grade levels to review the data, we look to see, are there any gaps that we find overall for the grade level, and what can we do for that? So we'll do that in math as well. And that is it. See, I did a twofer. I want to prove it. Unbelievable.
One of the things I want to bring up, and I think I know the answer, what the administrators would say on this, but how valuable would be grade realignment, which is also known as reconfiguration, to increasing our productivity?
Well, as we talked about before, it allows us to use the staff more efficiently. So what you'd have then is say all the kindergartner teachers meeting together, sharing ideas, sharing when we give an assessment, whether it's a universal screening like FastBridge, or it's the common assessment that the grade level gives. The teachers can immediately meet together, go over it, and see who did well, whose class didn't do well. Could regroup kids and say, okay, for the next week, I'm going to take this group so that I can reinforce this skill while you take that group because they've already got this skill and they can move on to that. And then additionally, it allows us with our RTI providers to make groups that, because sometimes we have to have, because one's in EJA building and the other's in the CE building, 2 groups that only have 2 kids in it because they're not in the same building, so you can't combine them. Whereas if they were in the same building, you could make a group of 4 and then have that RTI provider available to take a higher level group that might need some support.
I just think that the board still has to come to terms with how we're going to proceed on that in the near future and come up with some strategies of, what we're going to do with that topic. So I think let's throw that out there for board consideration.
So the high school's not involved in any of this,
Not in the pilot, no.
but any of the links goals.
The high school has their own LINKS goals. These,
Well, some, district-wide, they're reading and math, not necessarily for the wellness and
yes,
research-based projects and life readiness, yes, that's pre-K 12.
the ELA math is just 5,
Yes.
So
pre-K 8.
they have reading and math goals separate than these? Is that what I
High
heard?
school?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Okay.
They haven't, I don't know if they've met yet. Then they have. It's on their radar, I know that, as far as better results on reading exams and such.
So are you the overall coordinator for all this?
The craziness, the circus. Yes, I am, but Caroline Stefano was a terrific help and really reached out to all these vendors for me, and because she knows a lot of them, because she spends a lot of her time on the podcast and the Twitter and so I really have to say a big thank you to her because she helped organize it. But yes, along with the ELA panel, they've been terrific and they'll continue to be helpful, as will Jim and Karen and Freya. They've all been great on the meetings.
Is there a big difference between the programs?
The specific phonics programs, I would say, there's not a huge difference. It's just a slight tweak in terms of how the initial presentation of the phonics skill is made. There's a lot of difference between the specific phonics programs and what we do with Lucy. So I think that's where you'll see the big difference. In terms of the comprehensive program, which would be the CKLA or the modules, their structure is very different than the Lucy structure. It covers the same type of skills and content, but again, covers it in a different way. So I'd probably say that that's where the biggest difference is in the comprehensive programs.
Because you'll have to look and compare all these things to see which direction you want to go in. And they're all happening at the same time. Was that your strategy?
Well, like I said, when we met with the ELA panel, we talked about, so we had embarked on something, they were in the process of it when I started working here 12 years ago. Time flies. And in that process, we started looking at Lucy, and we had a group of people who looked at some different programs and then immediately narrowed it into, okay, let's pilot this one thing and see if we like it or don't like it. And people felt that it was just narrowed a little too soon. So they really wanted to feel like a wide net was cast so that people could get an idea of the different things that are out there. So it'll be a little tiny
Well, I have a
bit
couple
soon, but we'll
of
be
other
okay.
things. I know what you're saying, David, about we might need more time, but I worry that we're spending a lot of time on a lot of programs. And so I wonder, and I mentioned this in some other conversations, but that if that first presentation meeting, that we could really look at these numbers that we were presented, the kids not doing grade level, not working at grade level. And kind of, I can only speak for myself, I'm a little confused by all these methods and how they came about and how they were chosen and what the difference is. And how do we get this information to parents and, what we're doing. So I think maybe we look at this together in October and just look at the numbers and talk to people about what they perceive, with the circumstances behind the numbers as they are, and then how the things that people are choosing to work, how they think they might work, and then how we can have kind of tracking moments through the year or two. I hate to spend a lot of time on something that people feel doesn't work fast, so we really want to get that like quicker. And I think we were all concerned about the percentages, and I know COVID took a big chunk out of all those numbers, so.
Well, we need to climb back up, so.
Right.
That's fine, we can do a presentation.
Not to get down a rabbit hole too far, but doesn't Fastbridge break apart, like reading as a number is a very like arbitrary thing. So like reading fluency, kids can read the words, but they don't necessarily know the words that they've read.
Yeah.
So on that like reading number, like that's the average of their score. But then in there, like, can you see like where's your fluency, where's your word recognition, because some of these programs address the comprehension and some of them address sounding out the words, and we're not always reading like you think reading and understanding, and some of these they'll read and some of them struggle with the words but they know what they're reading, and other ones can read the words but they have no idea what they've read.
Yeah, and Fastbridge does,
Right.
and we can do a presentation on it, and that's how we ended up with the phonics, because what became very clear from there is across the board, from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade, even, although it was much smaller in the 7th and 8th grade, there was a definite issue that was our fluency, and when we digged down into it, it really was around the phonics, and kids still all the way up in middle school not having a clear phonics, and that is a gap from Lucy. So the teachers really did try to look at what was missing from Fastbridge and then pick some programs to possibly supplement for that. But then we also did look at comprehensive programs, but we looked at it with that lens of a solid reading program is going to have all these elements. Math is a little bit harder because they don't give you all that ins and outs of a great math program has X. There's also a lot of difficulty trying to find good math intervention programs. We've struggled with that for the past 2 years. So I'm excited that IXL seems to be trying to move into that space, but we'll continue to work on that one. That's something we worked on a lot this year.
I think there's some worry that Fastbridge may have been a tough measurement for some kids, that they didn't do that well on Fastbridge. I don't know if you see that, but is that the right tool? Is that the tool that is used kind of in the field?
Well, I think a universal screener does just that. It's just a screener. So it gives you an idea that somebody's struggling with something. It can dig some of the data down, but we always do diagnostics on top of that to then dig down and say, and some of them come from Fastbridge, but we have a lot of diagnostics that are outside of Fastbridge that really help. And the archive providers give those along with the school psychologists and the interns to try and dig into what the specific issue is, because it's important to understand what the issue is, because you can't address a skill gap unless you know exactly what is the gap that's there. So
Okay.
the work is on there, but we can definitely do a presentation. And that brings us to, can you switch from this one? Is this yep, there we go. So as I mentioned just briefly, so one of the things that we got, again, just as a reminder, this is hopefully our last year on the school comprehensive education plan. We have been told by the state that our scores were moving up and that we had been told that prior to COVID, so it's just them saying it again. So we should be off the list after this year, but because we're still on the list, one, we have to do the plan, and two, we get the money. We don't have to get the money, we get the money, we're very excited about it. So the committee got together to do the comprehensive education plan. Committee came up with 2 goals or commitments, because the state has to call everything something different. So if they can you just scroll down, or can I do that with the clicker? One more. There we go. So commitment number 1. We commit to culturally relevant, accessible curriculum for all students to meet or exceed the state standards by the end of middle school. So that's a big commitment language. The state makes you kind of jump through a few hoops, and you have to use very specific language. So that's our language. That basically is us saying that we're going to work really hard on improving our scores, and that we're going to be making the curriculum accessible for all students. So that's just making sure we are providing what the kids need in order to be successful. As part of that commitment, if you scroll down a little bit more, we had to do strategies, methods, how we would gauge success, and resources. So you can see on there, we're going to have some focus groups. Part of that is part of the SEP plan required us to have focus groups with kids in order to make the plan. So we met with a variety of small groups of middle school students and asked them a variety of questions about basically school climate for the most part. And then we're going to just continue doing that throughout the year so we can kind of see how kids are feeling about how things are going in terms of that. Then there'll be, if we scroll down
This has
to,
been linked to the links goals, the same thing, but this,
yes, so we couldn't use the links
This is
goals
not-
because it's a different format, it's different questions, it's different ways to do it. But so this is our way of backing into the links goals.
to meet or
But
exceed
but
state
use
standards.
the, yes, but use the terminology that the state requires us to use for the SEP plan. So then our second, and I'm not gonna read all through this, because you guys could definitely read it on your own. But you set out strategies, and then our second commitment is we commit to deepening connections and relationships among students, staff, and the community. So that's a continuation of the work that we've been doing in both restorative justice and responsive classroom. So those are our 2 commitments, and then you'll see what our action steps and our methods are. This will be posted on the website, so that families in the community can see what's involved in it. And then there is a secondary grant that we got. So with this straight SEP, we get a grant of $225,000 for the middle school, plus another $50,000 for the district, because the middle school, being a school in need of improvement, makes the district a targeted district. So we get $50,000 to work on that as a district and $225,000 to work on it at the building level. And then additionally, they put out an opportunity for specifically anybody who was interested in hiring a coach from internal staff. That was the requirement on the grant, and that was another $100,000. So we did put in for that, and we were successful. So that money will be used. We posted the position, I think it closes on Tuesday, to see if we had any internal staff that would be interested. And that's going to be specifically used for math to help with the spring math pilot for the teachers. And then any additional time they might have is going to be used to help with any planning of interventions and things in mathematics, because that was an area we're still struggling with.
So would this be an area where you look at bullying?
Yes, under commitment number 2.
So you might have a focus group on bullying with,
And we have survey questions. To give the progress, the committee came up with, they did the trusted adult. There's also going to be questions on bullying on the survey, the climate survey they gave in the spring. They'll do it again in the fall. They're going to do it as well in the winter time, and then they're going to do it their third time. They're going to do it a little earlier. They felt like this past May kind of skewed some of the data because they waited a little bit too long in the year and things had happened. not in the school community, but out in the world in general that may have skewed that information. So the staff survey, the staff will also have a survey about, their climate in the building. And so for them, the questions that we were gonna look at was, my opinion is valued and I can speak openly and honestly. And there'll also be a family survey that will go out, and the questions specifically that we'll look at from there for, in terms of our progress, would be school staff know and care about my child, and I'm encouraged to participate in my child's education. So those will be things that we'll look at throughout the year.
Good question,
Mhm.
Carrie. The term culturally relevant, can we explain to me what that means and what's that all about?
Sure. So part of what the district is required to do, is you have to do, and I want to use the exact terminology for it, but it's a self-reflection, it's a equity self-assessment. So as part of that, when you're doing the assessment, and part of the questions that the kids got in the focus groups was, do they feel represented in the material that's presented? Do they feel like there's real world examples that are relevant to them? Kids with the real world piece, and this happened last time too, didn't feel that there was as much of a connection as we would like to see between real world. So while it says culturally, really how the kids answered that question was, they didn't necessarily see a solid connection between what we're teaching in the classroom and something they're going to use in the real world or that's relevant to their lives. For the questions on the questionnaire, is it culturally relevant? But it really is a very broad terminology. It's not specifically broken down by racial relevancy, gender relevancy, or anything like that. It's really the way that our kids answered the question, and it might not necessarily be the way that they intended the question, but our kids answered it, not necessarily do they feel that what we're working on in classrooms is relevant to them in their life and what they're
So
doing.
this is a term devised by New York State Education Department.
Now, in that, I'd like to be clear, I think as a school district, we are very supportive and absolutely want all of our kids to feel comfortable in the school, feel like they're represented in the curriculum that we choose to use, and feel like it's relevant and valid to them. And I think that's true regardless of minority status, regardless of gender, any of that piece. So we like to look at it as across the board, do our kids feel accepted? Do they feel represented? Do they feel heard? Do they feel part of a process that makes sense to them? And that's how we take that question.
But this is something that we would have been exercising, not just today and for the future, but we have been doing this already.
I think with the sensitivity of the world around us for the last, say, 3 years, I think there's more of a focus in on certain things. Have we made any groups feel marginalized? But for our kids, when they were asking the focus group questions, we really got from them was much more broad scale. Like I said, it was much more the connection between them and the world. That is not to say that there weren't some kids who did answer that they felt like there were certain parts of their identity that they were not comfortable that the school supported. So that is something that we would look to address.
And is that something that you could go into more detail with the board at some point?
Sure, we can definitely, and Ina sat in, she was part of the SEP committee. So we can go over with you what the focus groups said and things. But like I said, for the most part, it was I did the 5th grade. And, it was very much about connecting it to what they saw was important to them versus when people see culturally relevant, that wasn't where the conversation went in my focus group. I think there were a few conversations in the 8th grade focus group that were around, certain students feeling like they're not represented as a whole in the curriculum. But I think that they were, that was pockets. That was not the overall tenor. If that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Well, so I know I'm interested in this, looking at bullying and how we might focus on that more. So I just see this as an avenue that might be able to get into that, but it's only for the middle school. So we want to, I'm interested in district-wide kind of, but this could, and I'm wondering about meeting with kids and families. and-
Focus groups are great. It's wonderful really to sit down with kids.
Yeah.
And the focus groups, I think the important piece to it is, and the state does require that you do this, but I think it's great that they require you to do this. It has to be a representative sample. So it has to have kids who are in honors classes and kids who are in special education and kids who have behavioral issues and kids who have never gotten in trouble once, boys, girls. It really helps you kind of get a nice overall picture from kids. And sometimes the kids disagree with each other and have an experience. I wouldn't say disagree with each other. They have an experience that's different than another student in the focus group. And that's interesting to hear and see that they feel that way. But I do have to say, again, I met with the 5th grade, but I was very pleased. And overall, I looked at the notes that our kids really do feel like we do listen and we do hear them. They just would like us to make life a little bit more exciting and a little bit more connected to. And when they say real world, I should just be clear, the things that they think are important in the real world. So some of that has, we'll definitely be working on others of it. Not everybody's going to be an Instagram famous or a TikToker millionaire or what have you, but so a lot of their points were very valid.
Well, we thank the group for working. I know you met like 6 times. Just like, and if I know we're here, I thank her for representing the board, but all the other folks and the parents that were on it. So, thank you.
I just want to go back to the links draft goals. The question for you, Randy, is would like project-based learning and individual pathway projects for students come under a goal or come under a strategy?
Well, the goal is to have every kid engaged in at least, by 2025, at least 3 of those types of, that type of work, 3 times a year minimally. So by 2025, our goal is K-12, every kid is doing some type of project-based learning, a unit that involves project-based learning 3 times a year.
Okay.
To answer the question.
Can you pull back up on the screen? Is that possible? I just want to look at it for a second. Yeah. So you're considering research-based projects as project-based learning. That's
Yeah, so you'll see when we get to this, you'll see the strategy, what they'll have it broken down.
okay. All right. Thank you.
For kids will either have a selection of topics to choose from, or they'll choose their own, it could be interdisciplinary, or it could be subject specific, and that the teachers will determine that, and then they'll go to work and learn about it and research.
All right. So it comes under the strategy.
Yep.
Implementation comes under strategy. All right. Thank you.
Anything else, Ken?
If you'd like me to talk for another 15 minutes, I'm getting the hook from Mr. Palmer over here. But no, that is all that I have.
Mr. Palmer.
How long do you feel I've been doing this?
3 minutes.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got a lot of contracts and agreements that I linked for you guys. I'm just gonna briefly touch on each one of them, further explain what they are, ask if you have any questions, and power through them. Circle of Friends, as we know, is a community-based organization for our UPK. We have a lease agreement for them to utilize our space. We also have a services agreement in there for them to provide the service. Special education evaluators, we've met with Greene County. What we're looking to do is act as the evaluators for pre-K and kindergarten levels at the younger ages, instead of going through the county, because that is backlogged pretty far, the timeline to get them in. Twin Counties, you'll see that services agreement, we're just renewing that. Center for Spectrum Services, again, that's a renewal as well for the upcoming year. It also includes summer, finally, this just ended, but I just got the contract this week. So thank God we finally got that. SRO contracts, we've talked about quite a bit. Village of Athens will still service the EJA campus while the sheriff of Greene County will do the Coxsackie campus. Those contracts are there. Point of care testing is for our nurses to administer the testing if needed in the nurse's office, just through the county as an independent contractor. USDA agreement, so we can sell USDA food. Any questions on the contracts and agreements?
Just for Randy, because I think last time we met, you were gonna have a discussion with Mayor Coxsackie. I don't know if there's anything to share at this time on that, or?
We've had 2 meetings scheduled, and one meeting had a tree fall on his house, so we had to reschedule, and another one, yeah, it's a family emergency, so we are set. What am I calling it? Next week, we're trying again, so,
Okay,
yeah, so I will be meeting with him.
so if we did something with them, it would be sometime in the future, next year, if that, I mean, what was the purpose of the discussion, I guess, is what we're trying to get at.
With the mayor.
Yeah, it was about the SRO and their ability to provide
And
one.
then also just to reiterate all the other things we are, already partnerships we have in place, just to make sure that, we want to continue all those, and what are some other possibilities, what are some other possibilities for partnerships with the village.
Okay, all right, thanks.
To open up, keep that going.
I did skip right over policy discussion, my apologies. E-payments. So we had talked, I want to say it was back in March time-ish, about possibly bringing e-payments, Venmo, using my school bucks and whatnot for ways of ECAP, extra classroom activity funds, teams to collect money. We ran it through our auditors. The response that they gave us is essentially what was copy and pasted into the e-payments document that was attached for you. The biggest concern from the auditors was really how are kids going to be involved with the collection of e-payments, because if we have a Venmo account set up, let's say, and somebody Venmos us, there is no changing of money. It's just coming from one account to another. So how do the kids play a role in that? And that was outlined in section F, which is the final section of that. Basically, the kids would be in charge of maintaining the ledger at that point. And again, this is directly from our auditors. Just wanted to make sure we were in compliance with that. Any questions on that?
I know when we talked about it at the policy committee meeting, we were trying to also figure out the best way to keep it so that we could keep track of the different, whatever you just said, extracurricular, those ECAP.
Yep.
Is that what we said?
ECAF, yeah, extra classroom activity funds. Yep, you're good.
That for us to try to, because I know that that's been an issue in the past, we haven't kept track of it very well. So I know that that was some of our concerns, was just making sure.
Yeah, so one of the things we've done this past year, Cheryl Mathis, myself, and Mary Ann Rubino met with all of the extra classroom activity fund programs, clubs, whatnot. And we talked about it, the ledger. Like, that's the big thing we're missing is the ledger. Part of our athletic departments, for example, part of our end of the season checklist is submitting the ledger to both Kurt and myself. So in order for me to get paid, I had to submit a ledger. That ledger is an outline of every dollar in, every dollar out. Every dollar in had a deposit slip that was signed by the needed people. Every dollar out had the withdrawal slip that was signed by all the people, which included the students, which included the advisors, which included, in the case of athletics, included Kurt, varsity club head, which is Jackie Cashin. So that is the one area that we really did try to tackle this year. Where it's going to get tricky with that, with Venmo, is there's not going to be a deposit slip. There's not going to be a withdrawal slip. I mean, that's kind of where, and that's really what they outlined in that section F there, is how do we really make sure we're accounting for this? So it's really going to be bouncing back more so in that case to the ledger, in which case on the ledger, I would even suggest saying, what form of payment was it? Was it a check? Was it cash? Was it, if, instead of me saying $300, and it could have been a mixture of cash and checks, now it's, what is it? What form of payment? Was it check? Was it e-payment? Was it cash? So that would be my suggestion to it, and that seems to be what the auditors.
Will they each have access to the Venmo so that they know?
There would be
who's making
multiple, like
payments? Okay.
the soccer team might have one, the basketball team is
Yeah,
different.
That's what I know we talked about, so I'm just
Yep.
making sure.
I don't
everyone-
want,
'cause
I don't want Wilkinson to have any access to my money.
No, but I'm saying, like, you wanna make sure that you can keep track of it, you don't want one
Right,
account, because
right.
if there's 6 events going on.
Right.
You really have to make sure people are writing the
Yep.
correct
Yep.
thing in the memo.
Yep, it's the
So we talked about different accounts. so maybe-
the ledger is key. Gotta have, each team, each program, each club has to have a ledger. Every dollar in should be listed somewhere on that ledger. What Cheryl has started doing is at the end of every month, she, in her office, mails to every club advisor, every coach, their current balance sheet. And what the coaches or the club advisor is supposed to be doing is matching that balance sheet from our system to their ledger. So, I'm 10 for 10, it's, I guess, good.
That's just to help everyone with, because I know we
Yeah.
talked in depth about that. at
Right,
our
right.
policy meeting.
The student should be involved.
Oh, with the ledger? Oh, no, they are, yeah. Yep. Yep, they're involved at the withdrawal, deposit, and the ledger piece of things.
And the only other piece we talked about was, what is the Venmo account gonna be linked to?
That's, yeah, that's gonna be
Just like,
the topic of discussion is where's that money going?
well, even just like what, because you're supposed to, I don't have a Venmo, so
Mhm.
I don't really know all the
Yep.
ins and outs, but it's linked to an email, like what?
Well, one of the suggestions was to use My School Bucks because we already have it and because it's already linked, it's already within our school. That was one of the options. But those are, those are points and things that certainly be discussed and obviously put into the policy. School taxes. All right. So I've got, I'm just going to talk about the major possible tax surcharges for right now. We've got 2, one of which is Pepper Tree, which actually has 2 properties that are currently assessed at the same exact value, and they're looking to reduce those exact 2 properties to the same, a different exact value. So they're currently valued at $275,000. Both of those they're proposing to reduce to $144,375, which, all the numbers aside and everything else, is basically a $7,156.60 hit to our levy that would have to be made up otherwise. So that's one of them. The bigger one is Empire Merchant, who is coming off of a pilot. Their reduction is, I haven't gotten the official paperwork yet, but I've been told from somebody that they're looking for a significant reduction that would amount in a hit to our levy of about $109,000. That's a big one. So that's something we're definitely going to be monitoring very carefully. Sleepy Hollow Lake tax surcharge. I gave you guys an update, or you all an update. The first of which was the estimated next phase, the pretrial phase for attorneys. Those fees are estimated to be at about $85,000 for the next piece. And basically, just to give us a quick idea of where we're at, I also included the timeline that includes everything from pre-me to now, me being here too. We've got about $499,000 that could be possibly paid back if they were to prevail as the winners of this case. Are we prepared? My answer right now is yes. We've got $500,922.88 in a reserve. The last time we updated that was back in April. Yes, April 26th board meeting. We increased that by $90,000. To date, we have spent $109,000 and change on legal fees alone. So that's where we're at right now. In discussing with our attorney, they genuinely feel this is a precedent-setting case. I would agree with them because of the emergence, as we all know, of community homes that are popping up everywhere. So I think this is something that we'll continue to obviously look at, break down, and look to possibly share costs with the local
Question on that,
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow, and this is, I think I know the answer to this, but the actual lake itself, is that considered a common area? I would say not, but I'm just
I
wondering.
believe the lake is, I think it's the common properties like the
It's just
tennis
the-
courts,
Tennis court and-
Yeah.
the amenity.
All the Forever Wild,
The what?
all the Forever Wild in there.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
Is it the 85,000 split three ways, or is that our share?
85,000 is the whole total for the legal fees. It's not just our total.
So it's split
It's
three ways.
however we decide to go with it. That's something we're going to talk about. School tax warrant, before you leave, I need you to sign it. I've got 2 copies of it. I got most of your signatures already. Taxes for the upcoming year based on the approved levy amount from the budget vote will be as follows. Athens will be $17.7551 per thousand. Caro, 28.2545 per thousand. Coxsackie, 27.3937 per thousand. New Baltimore, 25.9131 per thousand. Those will be the tax rates for the 22-23 school year. I did want to preface one thing. If you had printed off or looked at the school tax warrant more than 3 hours ago, you would have seen another column that's not currently on here. That was the star amount. That's not required to be on a warrant, but I got an email 3 hours ago that said I think it was the town of Coxsackie, one of the towns within our school district, had a differing star amount that just came through. And so they're gonna have to rerun those and get that back. That does not affect the tax rates at all. That has nothing to do with the tax rates. Tax rates are based on your equalization rates, your assessment values, so on and so forth. Athletics. The last time we had gotten together, we had talked about the idea of program assistant coaches. And with that, I had sent out an email to everybody with with that proposal. You'll also notice later on in the agenda here, we do have some folks that are hopefully going to be approved for that role. The reason we went ahead and wanted to get those names on there is fall sports are starting. We didn't want them to be without a coach at the start of preseason if they had somebody in mind. So with your blessing, we'd love to move forward with that program. But I did want to ask, does anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Athletic trainer update. So we had this grand idea to have this athletic trainer. We had a contract in place. Life was good. That athletic trainer no longer works for Top Form. Top Form has been trying to hire somebody. So we are back to square one of not having an athletic trainer. However, if Top Form does hire one, they will honor the agreement that was previously signed. So fingers crossed they get somebody. If you know anybody that wants a job, please have them go talk to Ron. I can give you his cell phone number.
So that's a trainer?
Athletic trainer. Yep.
As
So
opposed to the PT guys?
it's the same thing.
Same thing.
Yep.
So they,
Yep. So Top Form does all our PT,
okay,
does our athletic training, does our coaching classes. They're still going to be able to help us with the coaching classes and the CPR, the first aid. But right now we're kind of in limbo with, can they hire somebody or not? If you recall to last year, this has been an ongoing issue with virtually every place that hires trainers locally. Some quick August shout outs. Earlier today, I had the privilege of attending the 7th annual Play It Forward 518 golf tournament. Got a little bit of a sunburn, but not too bad. I also had the privilege of bringing these fine 11 young men and women with me. They are Coxsackie Athens wrestlers. The goofy kid in the bottom right-hand corner, he might look familiar. But they were great. They were well behaved. I got some great feedback from the people. There was 196 golfers at this tournament and about 30 people that volunteered. A third of those were ours, which is awesome. This is the 3rd or 4th year I've done this with the kids. They love it. The tournament, just in a quick summary, the tournament is run by Play It Forward 518, which is a not-for-profit that raises money for kids fighting life-threatening illnesses. They donate money to the Melody Center up at Albany. They do Make-A-Wish trips for people. They send kids to concerts, WWE events, you name it, tickets galore. My brother-in-law is in charge of it. That's my connection to it. But a few years ago, I brought like 4 kids and they won a bunch of stuff. This year, Tristan went home with a signed picture of Lawrence Taylor. Joe went home with a jersey signed by Jerry West.
Oh, wow.
Skylar went home with a hair care package. I don't know what's in that. And her brother Armin went home with like a dog grooming kit. I went home empty-handed. Not cool. I really wanted that Mickey Mantle picture, but so be it. Can't win them all. So that was a great outing this morning. We sponsored a flag in memory of Colby Lord. That's the other picture up there, Nick, if you want to. So we sponsored a flag for Colby. And we always sponsor a flag for the team as well. So good time, beautiful weather. And again, minimal sunburn for me, which is rare. Next thing on my agenda here is Custodial Grounds Crew. Just want to give them a shout out. I think they've been doing a great job at both within the buildings and outside. We finally, Bart, you're gonna be thrilled about this. We got the bed of that truck out of the woods behind the 5-bay garage. It's gone. It's now in a dumpster. We're getting rid of it.
Bring it to Bart's house.
I picked up a lawn ornament.
It's a memento.
But I practically had to pull Petromali away from me because I thought you really want to hit that thing with a sawzall.
And we get money for that.
Oh, yeah, crap. Oh, you better believe it. Another shout out to Summer Food Service. Just, thank you guys to everybody in the Summer Food Service program for getting our kids fed. And 2 more shout outs here. Treasurer, thank you to Mary Ann. We survived my first audit. It went well. I think it went well. My insider says we did all right. I kept asking, how's ECAP? Extra activity funds, because I know you guys were big on that last year. So I'm hoping we really answered the call there with our corrective action plan. And tech team, just want to give you guys a big shout out too. I'm sorry I didn't list you on here for the iPad sale. So good job with that. Thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
No updates from your principals and directors. How's the summer going? Is it gone?
Long, I feel like short.
Very hot.
Oh, God.
Oh,
Very hot.
Very, very
Yes.
hot. The gym needs an air conditioner.
Going good, very quick, a lot of preparing. Me and my colleague here is just going over
There's not enough time.
kindergarten registration dates and screening dates for this coming
How
school year.
come Ryan gets to go play golf and you guys?
Vacation day.
Oh, okay.
No, it's going well. We're doing a lot of planning, getting a lot of things ready for the upcoming school year. This past week, we met with the Lynx team. Both elementary schools met together and they came up with some really good action steps that will be presented at the end of August, hopefully for review. And we're just plugging away. We're getting ready for the beginning of the school year. Also, it was really great to have the food program down in Athens. So thank you for advocating for that. The summer rec program down there had anywhere from 50 to 70 kids. So it was really nice to see that come back to the building. And I'll be able to offer them breakfast and lunch.
Good. Well, thank you for your efforts this hot summer. Appreciate it. We all appreciate it. Okay. Just acknowledge some public correspondence that I think Mr. Squire is working on. And is there any public comment from folks here? Yes. Jessica?
There's a couple things. My first question is, I have a question about Miss Tancredi Penman. and her certification. I checked the New York State records and she is not there. I was wondering if you can show me or show us her certificate.
Well, probably not, because it's in HR. I mean, whatever that would be between her and the HR people.
You can look it up online though, and it's not there.
Well,
I mean, you can look up anybody. Randy's on there, like other
I'm on there
teachers are on
too.
there. So
But that, we don't have that.
I just think it's weird that all our other staff is on there, because I did look up numerous ones and she's not.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious if she is certified or not.
I don't know, I can ask,
I mean, you could just,
but I don't want, I guess I don't want to speak about particular people, especially if someone's not even here yet.
I understand.
Okay,
I'm
thanks.
just curious because it is our middle schoolers and they should have a certified teacher. Also, I'm curious, are we expanding the business education program? Because we already have a business teacher, which is Kathy Fuller, who from everything I've read in the s'mores and stuff from Randy, it's been nothing but high appraisal. So I was just curious if we were like expanding the program or why we're hiring another business teacher to be in there.
Okay, you're in, I got it.
Okay, and let's see. The Lighthouse District stuff. I was just curious, like, who kind of like approved this, got us on the list, and can we opt our kids out? I know we can opt them out of certain programs in the school if we're not on board with what they're teaching. Is there a way to opt out? Like, could I opt my daughter out of the Lighthouse program?
I don't know. You mean, is this the program that you folks went for training with? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Because it's kind of like, if you read the 33 pages, there's a lot of kind of touch and go on like CRT type stuff. And I don't really think that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm. I guess I would start with your daughter's principal and ask about that.
Can I ask? But when you said 33 page, like what 33 page? Like, just so I know here.
Yes.
Okay.
There is certain pages on here. I'm not sure if the board has read. Have you read this? You guys haven't read this. Okay. Well, there's page 5 and 24 specifically. They specifically speaks about quotes, educators of color in classrooms and schools employing qualified educators of color will improve the experience of all learners, especially learners of color, and will contribute significantly to closing achievement gaps. No learner marginalized. When we say the system must enable meeting the needs of and fostering growth of all learners, we mean all, and especially the Black learners, Indigenous learners, and the learners of color who have historically been marginalized. I mean, I have nothing wrong with diversity in our district. I think we really should have more diversity. I mean, our admin seems to be comprised of mostly Caucasians, our board. If you look around, everyone is like predominantly white. And I thought it was pretty awesome when we had Dr. Fernandez here because a lot of the kids kind of related to him and they did like him. So I was sad to see him actually go. So that's just some food for thought. I mean, if you want, I can forward you this. You guys can keep this if you want it. I did kind of mark those pages. And another question was about the Devereaux. I was curious if we're still affiliating ourselves with them. The Devereaux
Devereaux
program?
and Red Book?
Yeah,
I don't recall that we have
it was
signed anything there yet, but
brought up
It's
in like a
possible.
meeting, I think maybe June's meeting. Was touch base. I was just curious because like all the negative publicity, like with the sexual abuse between the staff and the students, I kind of think maybe we should cut ties with them.
well, we can look and see if there's anybody, if we're using them. I know they're on a list of residential placements that we might use.
Yeah. I know there was concern about that. So like I
Yeah.
just kind of wanted to
Okay,
bring awareness to that. And I do appreciate you bringing up the bullying thing. It's also why I was here,
Mhm.
because that's been a real problem in the middle school.
I think we're all interested, what we might do and how we might. Before COVID, some of us who were on the board for a while, we did have focus groups. Kids came in, remember, and they talked to us about everything.
Yeah.
And it was spectacular.
I know,
because-
Jenna was.
Yes, it really was. So if we could do that again, I mean, we just have some ideas, staff, parents.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jenna
do
would
some stuff.
definitely be on board to talk with you guys and bring up some ideas or
Mhm.
whatever.
You who would?
Jenna, my
Your
daughter.
daughter, okay, thank you.
Yeah, because I
What
mean,
grade is she in?
she's going to ninth grade.
So high school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Whole new world.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's it. All that I wanted to bring up.
Okay,
And kind of look for answers.
okay. Thank you. Yep. Mr. Squire will reach back out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Anderson, how are you?
Good, all right.
Good. Okay. Hi.
Here is.
Okay.
May I speak though, because I was on the correspondence part, just for like not even a minute. May I?
And you're,
Sharon McHugh.
oh, Sharon, go ahead.
Okay, just we corresponded through email, so
Yes.
we'll just keep it at that. The only thing is on the agenda, if we could just, with the minutes, employee opening, job postings, maybe change it to discrimination practices in employment opens, let's not that's what I was addressing, so we'll keep it at that. And then here it says graduation rates, we can add declining graduation rates, because
Okay.
it's cryptic. That way people, okay, thank you.
Okay, so we move to personnel matters. A motion of consent to approve 8B1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And then 4 a long list, subs, and 5A, B, C, 6A, 7A, 8A, 9A, B, C, D, E, 10 A, B, C, 11A, 12 A, B, C, D, 13. That's it. So move to. A second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I still just have concerns about B, so I don't know if you want to pull that out, or I can just, I'm sorry, 3B. But I've already expressed, so I'm not gonna reiterate myself.
What's the number again?
3B on page 5, top of page 5.
Like holding up and voting on it?
No, I can vote, I'm just either,
Just-
if you want to pull it
okay.
out, so I can, it's up to you.
Could we pull it out?
I see, pull it out. Yeah, we can pull it out. Yep. So all but 3B. And I did meet Ms. Hummel coming in, so you're 3C. So, but thank you for coming here and spending your 4 hours with us. And welcome. Almost. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Now,
Yeah, that one for sure.
so a motion to approve 3B.
When can we talk?
Well, if we want to pull it out and we'll talk in executive session.
Okay,
you want to do that?
I guess I would prefer.
Okay. So hold on 3B.
We can't technically discuss that if
Not now.
anyone has discussion, so we might as well.
All right. So we will hold on 3B and we'll talk about executive session and cover it in the future. Brings us to business matters. Is there anything, Ryan, we need to separate out, or is it all good?
All good.
So, motion and consent to approve C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
So
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So carries. Okay, any other public input? We'll go around the table. Mr. Wallace.
Just want to thank the custodial staff for the job they're doing in preparing the school for September, and all the hard cleaning they're doing in all the rooms in the building.
Kyle?
I will echo that, and then again, kind of said it last time, but having all the different programs here through the summer, and Tara part of that, and just being here at the facilities every week at this point with sports and things that are still using the fields, and the fact that we're keeping them all up and getting ready for school. And I know that my kids are excited for this year, and they're already asking me when can I go to class, when can I go to school? Got another month, so they're ready.
We just had a PTO meeting and we're really excited for a full normal school year where we can invite lots of volunteers to help us and get, things for the kids just back to normal with no 6 feet and all of that fun stuff. So we're really excited I think that finally occurring is gonna be at the start of the year.
Yeah,
It'll be great.
right.
All the people that are working here this summer, thank you for all your efforts to make it prepared and ready for a great new school year, and for all of the staff, teachers, assistants, and children that are still home, rest up so that you can enjoy this year, hopefully a little bit more normal.
I'm also excited that everyone gets to come back face to face. It wasn't 100% last year at this time. Some are still learning virtually, and I'm very excited that there is an integrated preschool, and preschool is expanding in this district. It's very much needed, and evaluations are going to be done in a timely manner now that you have a contract with the county, because that's not the case in other districts. They're booking out to December and January. So those kids will not get services. And your kids will come more prepared to preschool and kindergarten than the kids that are sitting home waiting for an evaluation. So good shape, good job.
I'm just excited for our staff, students, to come back to a normal year. No masks, no testing. Hopefully it'll be smooth sailing.
And just again, thanks for the summer for you guys that are here every day, working and getting everything ready for September.
Yeah, I'd just echo that everybody that's been officially doing the work over the summers here, and teachers and people that have been preparing, behind the scenes and at home, just thanking them for the hard work that they're doing.
Okay, our next regular board meeting is September 15th at 6:30 here. I don't know if it's here, but we'll get a room. And we need a motion to go in executive session. We will discuss some litigation and some CSE minutes. And afterwards, look at goals. Hopefully, though, we want to be out by 9, right, Bart?
Yes.
Yes.
8:30.
I know it is. Okay, just need a motion?
So,
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So carried. Okay, thank you.